got deeper and deeper in this gang life. Next thing you know it, we're over here fighting another major family here in Texas. And here we are out there in the rec yard, which I already had jumped before, but this is the biggest riot at one time that I've ever been in. I've been in little skirmishes of 5 guys, 6, but there's 150 of us out here just going at it. Baseball bat, shanks, everything. And so like I showed you in the paperwork, that's where I got shanked in the shoulder and the arm, and 12 staples across the top of the head, 6 down the back.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today's podcast, I am joined by a former gang member named Jamie Botello. He talks about his early life of crime and how it escalated. Jamie went on to go to prison twice for selling drugs. While he was locked up in prison, he was involved in prison riots and a lot of violence. Then one day, the Lord came knocking for Jamie. He didn't even see it coming. Jamie has totally reformed his life around and has given his life to the Lord. Jamie is living proof that with God, you can achieve many things. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this, and without further ado, let's get into Jamie's story. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today, I got a new guest on today. Jamie, thank you for coming on today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for wanting me on your show.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you reaching back out to me. I believe through Facebook or something. I came across your channel on YouTube. I was looking for a great guest that had a redemption story. Someone that has really been through something. And you've been in prison. You went to prison for selling drugs, got in a prison gang, and then you found the Lord by accident. You weren't looking. So it's a really you got a really unique story, but it's a redemption story. So I really like it, and I was really think it's a powerful story, Jamie. So I think the best way to get into your story today is from the beginning, man. But before we go into the beginning, you got any words or anything you want to say, or anything you want to add in before we go into your early life?
No, you actually hit it right on the head. Better than I could have said. Yep. Actually, like you said, God found me. It was totally wasn't looking, but He was looking for me, though. So.
All right. Well, let's go into your early life, Jamie. I know you had quite a rough, upbringing from what you've told me on our past conversations and stuff like that. Well, and you gave me your testimony. So from what I read, it sounded like you grew up in maybe kind of a broken home, right? Is that fair to say?
No, I had a mother and father, and I was actually born and raised in the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not knocking my dad or my family. No, I thank God I was born into the family I was born into, because it made me tough. It made me strong. Even though I used it to go the wrong way, I was still tough and strong that way. And I thank God, because now that I came back towards God, I'm gonna be tough and strong going this way now. But no, I had a home, and I was raised in Christianity. But what kind of, hate to say, my dad's gone, rest in peace, and I'm not knocking him. It was just like in the church, I would see, like, and I'm not knocking the church either, because we need church, and I would just see like two different lives. I would see like the man on the stage, and then a different man when he came home, and not severe, but what I mean is, you know, it was kind of confusing, So then I had always like a bad taste in my mouth about church, because not only in mine, but also in the church period, I would meet, mean people, and I didn't understand. I'm like, well, I always hear of this, love and mercy, and don't get me wrong, some of the meanest people I ever met was in church, but also some of the nicest people I've ever met was in church. So, you know what I mean? As a kid, I would be like kind of confused. And so no, I was raised with both parents. The thing is, I was raised in the church, and it was really confusing. So that's what kind of had me steer away from religion and go into the world, because basically people would preach one thing but live another.
Oh, okay. That was the main thing. What was it like for you when you were experienced and all that stuff? You seen someone, say your father up there preaching. Is that what he would do? And then he'd come home, he'd live a different life. And then for you at the time, that you seeing that, it just kind of made you start doing different things? Is that what it led you to do?
Yeah, no, because like I mean, it he wasn't like a severe like, oh man, he would, preach one thing and just come home and be a terror. No, no, no. It was just certain things were adding up, what I would hear at the church, and it was mainly, like I said, the other people in the church that I'd see stuff too, and plus your own will. You have your own will. I wanted to go hang around. I liked the kids that were acting up, and it drew me. But not only that, I'm the youngest, right? So I also would follow my older brothers, and so it wasn't so much, yeah, my dad, but not terror. That's what I mean. It was just certain little things weren't adding up, and I didn't realize this till as I got older. I'm like, well, you know what? Mm. And so that's what I mean is I gravitated because the flesh in me, now I know all these words, the flesh and the sin nature, and well, the things I wanted to do, I saw them doing. Oh, I like that. I want to go do that. But also too, me being the youngest, uh, I was like a punching bag, which is fine with me. I would fight with my older brothers, and we used to play football, and that's how I got real, as you could say, I guess, violent. I also got tough, because me being the youngest, my brother would hit me or I'd fight with him, and I thank God, now I used to look back, but now I thank God they made me tough. They made me able to take hits, and I could get in a fight. And like one time, I'll be real quick. One time I was complaining, my brother. I said, "Yeah, man, you used to beat me up, and you wouldn't even he was real big, and I was like, I was hoping he would like jump into fights with me. No, he would let me fight the guys one on one, and he'd sit there and watch, and he's like, I was like, man, you never jumped in for me. And do you know, it really used to aggravate me, and I'd get mad because it was an internal thing. Like, why didn't you help me? Why didn't you fight? And he goes, hey, man, I was preparing you for your future. And do you know when he said that, I don't have no ill will towards my brother no more. Because when I went in the prison cell, I didn't have my brother to back me up. I never had my brother. Well, he never jumped in for the fights anyway. So I was in there able to fight 1-on-1, 2-on-1. I used to get jumped 5-on-1, and I could hold my own while I was fighting there in prison. I'm like, you know what? Thank you. After a while, that's why I said God was preparing me without me even knowing it. That's why I said I've talked to you, and I said, God will prepare you when you're not even knowing what's going on. And when my brother told me that, it gave me peace, and I said, you're right. You know what? It did. It prepared me for what I went and got, mm, myself into.
Hmm.
My brother, there's a saying in prison, I came in by myself, so it was true. When I hit the yard and I'm in there fighting, I didn't have my brother to fight for me or help me. So I'm glad that he wouldn't jump in or he wouldn't get involved. He would let me fight. And you know what? Now I'm glad he did that.
What like when you were growing up though, like what were some of the things that you were doing when you were, at this young age that that led to that till you get joining in because you would eventually joined in a gang, right? Before you were in the prison system and all that.
No, what's crazy and how the devil will let stuff grow. This is why I do tell people, hey, watch what your kids are watching. I just liked violent movies, and as I kept growing up, I started watching those prison movies, and it was just a continual graduation. It was just little by little. I'm like, man, I like this fighting. I like the violence. And don't get me wrong, I've come to find out there was a lot of anger in our house because now that I know the Bible and know the Word of God, is if you don't let anger go, and you'll pass it to your kids. Now I know. And so it's a continue, like the Bible says, you can pass down stuff that you have. Your kids will do it too. That's what I mean. I've known people that've never met their father or never met, and the kid turns out a lot like the father that he's never met before. I've found stuff out now that I've been in prison and been through stuff I've been through. They're like, hey, this guy never met his dad, but he acts just like his dad.
Huh.
You see, and
Wow.
never met the man. So it was a continue. And what happened is I started gravitating towards the bad crowd, and I liked it. And they were getting in trouble. And as a young age, since I'm the youngest, I would hang around older kids because my brothers are older than me, and there's 6 boys and 2 girls in my family. So my sisters were so much older than me. They took care of me as a little kid, but I really didn't run around with them. I ran around with my brothers right next to me, and so I would hang out with their older friends. And so, like, let's say we'd go somewhere, and my mom would say, "Take your brother, so you won't, be in trouble." But little did they know their friends or whatever. I would see them drinking. They'd pass me a drink of alcohol, and I'm like, "All right." But like at the age of 8, like I said in my testimony, it was in somebody's house, and I want to say it was a family member's house. That's what I said. I always tell people, be careful what you have in your house. I was a little kid, and I'd go in the fridge and get their beer and take a sip. Or even sometimes there'd be a party at the house. You know how you grab the kid, here, take a drink, and I didn't like it. But then little by little, I would take a sip, and I was like 8 years old at this time, and that sip turned to two, and next thing I didn't like it, but I tried it again. And by 11 years old, that was it. I was hooked. That alcohol was. It took me, like I tell people now, it's like I took that drink and it was like a demon come out of that bottle. That was it. I was hooked by 11 years old. I had to have a drink, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't getting up and drinking every day, but if there was gonna be some alcohol around, I sure would try to drink it. You
Right.
know,
Love the feeling of it, I suppose. That was the
yeah, and
main thing.
then yeah, and I plus I wanted to act older, and then it went from acting older to actually liking it. I'm like, oh man, so
Mhm.
I mean, it was just a combination of things.
Yeah. So, what did that draw you to do? Like, did that just get you into more bad situations?
Yeah,
Like,
because that's
didn't Oh, go ahead, my bad, I didn't mean to
no,
cut you off.
but go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Well, yeah, I was probably gonna ask you what you were gonna go into, because I mean, what did it lead you to go into?
Yeah, because it led me. I started hanging around older kids. I started hanging around the older crowd. So I'm over here young. It was funny. There's times I was telling stories to guys a lot older than me that I ran into later on in life, and I said, "Yeah, I was at this party, blah blah," and they're like, "Man, I was a senior at that time," and I was like 11 years old, and I have no business. But I'm over there with my older brothers, and then there was sometimes I'd become friends with my older brother's friends, so my brothers wouldn't take me, and I would just go with them. Hit their friends. They'd come on, and then as you're a kid, they would like to take me because they're like, "Hey, go do this," and I go do it. All right, all right. So in other words, they call it in prison the crash dummy. Hey, go do this. Yeah, okay, I'll go do it. Hey, go grab this, and I'll go do it. And so that's where the drinking and trying to hang out with older people, and that's where it started leading on to, and it started getting deeper. And next thing you know, it got into fighting. That was the first, because even as a kid, I'd be fighting grown men at the age of 10, about 11, 12, 13 years old, because I'd go to a party, and I hung around older kids, and here ain't no parties. Next thing you know, there'd be older people showing up to this party, and I'm in the middle of the street fighting with grown men at the age of 13 years old. We'd be out there fighting at parties. I've been fighting since I was a kid. I was remembering a story the other day. I was just thinking back of at my brother's house. I'm like at the age of 10 years old, and I remember I'm fighting this kid. He called me over to fight me. He was a little older, and I wound up beating him up in somebody else's driveway, and they pulled me off him, and the mom took him inside and cleaned him up. And I was like, he called me over here to fight. So I would always have anger and fighting in me since I was little. Me being the youngest, like I said, my older brother would punch and bag me, but that, like I said, now that's fine. I'm glad he did that because it made me tough, made me real tough. I could take a hit, and they're like, man, I could jump off a roof. My brother, going back to that, how I even got crazy. My brother would say, jump off this roof or jump off this car, jump out of that tree, do this. And I would do it. I'm the youngest. All right, yeah, hey, jump on that, go do that. And I'd do it, and they were like, man, this guy's crazy, man. I got stories. If my cousins, I wish I could bring my family and they'd tell you, man, because we'll get family get togethers and they'll be like, hey, remember when Jamie was like 13? He jumped off the roof of the school, and there'd just be all kinds of stories of what they're like, man. And one time my aunt said, man, he's demon possessed. He has a demon in him. This guy, there's something wrong with him.
Just doing whatever, man, to show
I
out,
did
I
with
suppose. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
and then it even got fun. Like after a while, I didn't need them to tell me. I'm jumping off roofs by myself and jumping off, doing backflips off cars, and I mean, I did all kinds of stuff that the average person be like, I ain't doing that. you know, I look back now. At the time, I thought it was normal, but I look back now, I'm like, man, that was crazy. I thank God he held me because I was supposed to have been dead so many times.
Well, I mean, you ended up getting involved with dealing drugs. So, like, was this is this about the time that you did get involved with that, or we're talking about now?
No, this is at the actually at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, fighting. Violence came first, just fighting and alcohol.
Hmm.
And then as I came 13, 14, those drug movies, I was watching Scarface and seeing, so I'm like, man, I want money, And then at the school, by the time I turned 15, 16, I would get like little joints and roll them up, sell them $2. I just wanted some money because we didn't have no money, but that's not no excuse. But anyway, we really didn't have no money when I was raised. We lived in the city, and then we got in so much trouble. My mom moved us out to the country, and our mobile home. We wound up living in a trailer for a few years, and our mobile home got so cold that it the toilet bowl water froze one year. Because
Wow,
yeah,
just
that's
freezing,
we
no heat.
yeah, and it was the heat broke, and next thing you know, we got the stove burning because a lot of Mexican families over here in Texas, the stove is our heater. So
Jeez.
and then uh, so I would see other people with. I said, man, I want that, and then plus the movies I was watching led to that. I was watching prison movies and drug movies, and I'm like, all right, I want to do this. I want to do. Well, then what happened was I wound up having friends at school, and they were drug dealing. I said, well, let me. I want to, So how saying grows. I went from selling little $2 joints to when I was in high school. I met these guys, and they were selling heroin. So next thing you know it, I become friends with them, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll sell it. And so I started progressing. And next thing you know it, I started selling heroin now as a teenager, 18, 19 years old. And and that's how it was just a snowball of things. I was already drinking, partying. I was already hanging out with the wrong crowd. And it is true, wherever you hang out, you're gonna find different things that you have no business being involved in. So
Right.
as I was even drinking with the older crowd, I started running into older stuff. But you know what was crazy?
What's
The
that?
guys who I started selling drugs with, some of them were actually younger than me.
Really?
But come to find out, they were from a family of people either doing drugs or selling drugs, and they got passed on.
Hmm.
And so, like I said, I was just a little nickel and dimer selling little weed sticks. But when I met these guys were selling heroin, and they were doing it for kids. They were doing it at a big scale. Like,
Yeah.
man, you're younger than I am. And come to find out, their dad was involved in drugs, and the people in their neighborhood were selling it, and then so they got turned on, and so as kids they were selling it, and then they advanced up and became, as you can say, bosses.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
how I got into selling heroin as as a teenager.
What was that transition like then? So that's a big transition.
Yeah, but you just see the money. In the beginning, all you see is the money, and oh man, it was. We would go to the bars and clubs, and they knew we were underage, and we'd pay the bouncer, and they would let us in as grown-ups. They would go ahead, and they knew they would tag us as grown-ups, and they would give us the stamp or the wristband, whatever we needed to get in, because we'd pay them off at the door, and we're in there. We're kids. They used to call us the chavalones, which are little kids. We'd be the little kids, and we were all teenagers in the club buying the bar. It felt good. You're over here buying rounds, and everybody's like, oh, they're all around you because you're spending all this money and doing this and doing that. And so we were doing this as high school kids. You know, we were doing this as kids,
Right.
basically kids. Now, don't forget, at that age, we thought we were grown. Oh, we're grown. But now I look, I'm saying, man, we're kids. We were kids.
Hmm. Very
But
young.
we were young, but we were doing grown up stuff. We were living in hotel rooms and you know go and sell heroin and come back and just spend the money like easy come, easy go.
So, did you have like a crew of people, or was it just like you
What?
doing it? Or I mean, if you feel comfortable, I don't know what you really want to talk about on that.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, in the beginning, I'll start like everybody else. If everybody else sits here and says, I was a boss, no, I was a worker. I was just wanting to be in the group. So when I started out like everybody else. I had my own little, they would give me so many balloons to sell and I'd have to turn money in. And then um, I was a worker. That's all I was. But then I've always been that type. I guess God has called me to be a leader because I would watch and see what was going on. And then I'd be like, hey, I can do this. So um had eventually started happening is one thing about this dope life and how all it brings is we were all friends at one time and next thing you know we all get mad at each other and we start fighting each other. So I went from okay, I was just the average dealer on the street where somebody would give me the balloons and already have it made to where they took me to go cut it up as a worker. Next thing you know, I saw what they were doing. I learned it. So when that little miscommunication happened and they were like, "Oh, you get out of here, that's fine." I started getting my own ounces of heroin and cutting them up and making my own dope. So I started learning how to, score my own ounces of heroin, cut them up, make my own balloons, and I put people on the street to work for me when I was a kid. When I was a teenager. So by this time, I'm like 19 now, and so that's how it started evolving. It started getting. I went from this street level just worker as they told me what to do. Here's your balloons, go work, come back, turn money in. They give me more to where I learned how to get the blenders, get all the stuff, the materials you need to take. They called it black tar here. We get black tar here in Texas, and I'd have to go and cut it up, and put the all the ingredients on it, cut it up, and then get the balloon, get the funnels. It was a lot of headache to turn that black tar into powder to put it into balloons. It was a big process. But once you got it done, you would just be looking at money on the table, like man, because your fingers start hurting because you have to put those little balloons on the end of the funnel over and over and over, and you just keep, and then you tie the balloons and roll it up, and here we go, and then tie it up, roll it up, and you have those little balloons, and they were selling for $20 a pop. So you got a table full of balloons, you're looking at money, you're just like, man, that's all money, $20 each, and then you do your deals two for 35, three for 50. These are things we street dealers we'd say, hey, let them have more if they are willing to buy more, sell it a little cheaper. So it would get rid of the product and money would come in. And so that's how it started progressing. That's how the sin grows. And I wound up getting busted for that group for them when I was 19 and they wound up catching me in a room. We were about to cut it up, and that's why I want to say how the grace of God is had they busted me at that time, because this is how we used to do it. We used to go rent rooms. I used to go rent rooms, and you would go in there with the tools, which is the glass, the cutting, everything you need to process black tar and turn it into powder and put it in balloons and get it ready for street distribution. So I'd go get the room, take the tools. We call them tools, which is screens and everything you need, the powder to get the tar, blenders, and cut all this stuff up and put it in the balloons. Well, one day I went to go get the room. I was getting the suitcase down, the glass, everything you need to cut black tar heroin in the powder. Well, I guess the maid or somebody was watching me and they called the cops on me and I didn't know it. So as I'm in the room getting everything ready, they call me. They're like, "Hey, man, come across the street. Come meet me at this." Over here in Texas, there's a food chain that's called Luby's, and it's like a dine-in cafeteria style place to eat. So I go across the street to meet my friends, and they're like, "Hey, man, the laws are outside the room watching the room." And I said, "They are?" But I was in the room getting everything ready, so I didn't know. And they're like, yeah, when we came by to drop the stuff off for you to start cutting it up, you and the other guys, we saw the car and they drove off and when they got rid of the stuff. Now this was over 20 years ago. That's why I don't mind. This happened. That's what I'm saying. I've been in the drug game since I was a teenager, which is 30 years ago. And so this is 30 years. I don't mind. I can tell the whole story. Everything's done past and everything. These people aren't even dealing no more. Anyway, so When they stopped, they called me across the street. Hey, man, they're watching the room. I'm like, what? So while we're there in there eating, the drug task force goes inside Luby's, puts us on the table, and arrests us right there in inside of the restaurant. And it's like you see on the movies. It's true. They had us on the table, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? We know y'all are involved in something, and they put us on the table, and they're like, who's gonna pay for this meal? And they started searching everybody's pockets. Well, the boss had a big old wad of money in his pocket. And they're like, well, you're paying for it. They took money out of his pocket, took us up to the front in handcuffs, paid the bill, and then took us outside. Well, I've always been that stand up guy. So when they're like, hey, who's involved in this, blah, blah, they're like, the room's under your name. And I said, well, then it's mine. And they let all the rest of them go. I got arrested all by myself. I didn't say no, and I went to jail that day. They got me out a few days later, and I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. So when it finally went to court and got on that one, I wound up doing almost a year on that sentence. And I said, hey, don't worry about it. I ain't gonna say nothing. In which I didn't. Everybody who maybe one day they'll come across the video, they know that I'm telling the truth. They had us all on the table and everybody got let go that day except me. The room was under my name. So I said, and we always had this code that whoever gets busted with it is yours. And I said, all right. But the code was also, hey, go get me out of jail if you can, go get me. And so on that sentence, I wound up doing a year. I was like 19, and then I wound up turning 20 while I was in jail. And so now I'm 20 years old, and I'm over here doing time for my first heroin bit. But I already had gotten 3 aggravated assaults with a deadly weapon when I was 17 years old. See, so I was already in violence and already dealing with law enforcement since I was a kid, because at the age of 13 is when, they got me on some other stuff, just went to court. But anyway, I was already dealing with anger, you know, and all these issues. But going back to gangs, no, I was never a part of a gang in the streets. But I guess you can say I was part of an organization, because me and these guys who I'm talking about right here in this story, we weren't a gang, but you also couldn't mess with us either. So like if we saw one of our friends trying to get jumped on, oh, we were there and we would back each other up. So we weren't like gangs, because gangs will fight over like a street corner or a color or different things. But I call us like an organization. We're a group of friends that sold drugs together, and you just weren't going to mess with one of us or run us over. The rest of us are going to get involved in it. You know what I mean? And protect each other. So I wasn't part of no street gang, but I guess you can say I was part of organizations
Like a
before I
crew or
really
something too.
crew. Yeah,
Crew,
we were.
yeah. Yeah, so at that when you went to prison though this time, like no thoughts of changing, nothing like that, nothing not what
Well, I
wasn't
thought.
really.
Yeah, you see, and that's how I said. That's why I went back to how great God is. Had they waited to hit that room, and had not, they got to the room too quick. I was about to cut up. I think they were going to bring me 4 or 5 ounces of heroin, and at that time, you can cut those 4 or 5 and make 3 to 5 out of each one. And so you're talking 5 times 5 is 25 ounces of heroin. They were had they waited to hit that room, it was under my name. They would have ran in, and they cut heroin as heroin. It don't matter. So I would have got busted with 20 to 25 ounces of heroin. And God, I'm like, now I look back and I say, God, you had mercy on me then, because I could have been locked up for I don't know how many years, because heroin holds a different penalty. And I know all this now
Oh yeah.
because I've done feds now. So I didn't realize at that time, you're a teenager, you're thinking, oh man, I'm gonna go sell the drugs, not realizing I could spend like 20 years of my life behind this. You know, if they would have waited to go in that room, I'd have
Oh
been
yeah.
doing like 20 years,
Right.
from a kid. I would have been 18 years old with a 20-year sentence.
Well, so you did that 1 year, and then after you got out, what did that lead into? I mean, because that wasn't the end of the criminal career, right?
No, I got busted in 95. I got out in 96. And then I tried. And that's what I know is when you try to, without God, a lot of people are going to say, oh, no. But my story is I tried. I said, no, I'm not going to sell drugs. I'm not going to hang around those guys, in which I didn't. I got out. Well, guess what? I got involved in other stuff. I wound up getting assaults and DWI. I wound up getting other trouble. So in other words, I said, well, I'm not gonna hang around them, and I didn't. Well, I wound up getting in trouble over here because I tried it without God. I tried it on my own. So as time went on, I get out when I'm 20 and 21, 22. I stay kind of clean. I'm involved in small stuff. Yeah, all right, I help this guy. You want to say, okay, I'll show you in this, but I try to stay away from it. Well, then come 99, I get a DWI, and I'm in jail again. And in between these stints, I'm assault here, and I'm still dealing with the court system. And come around 99, 2000, um, this is when I started getting involved with drugs again because I said I'm not gonna do it no more. But then a friend of mine, he starts dealing with coke. Well, I knew about coke, but not really because I was dealing heroin. And when this friend of mine says, "Hey, I'm gonna start selling coke," because at his job there was some guys coming in from other states to come in and do these jobs, and he goes, "Hey, man, I got people coming in, and they're looking for coke, and I can find it and mark it up real high." So my friend, I said, "Well, you know what, man?" He was a good friend of mine. I'm thinking, "Well, you know what, man? Let me help you because if you go over there by yourself, man, they're probably gonna just rob you." And I'm thinking, "I'll be your backup." And then he knows about the drug game, but he doesn't know the ins and outs. And I said, "Well, you know what? Let me help you." So I started getting on the streets and asking people for coke. And then, like here in Austin, Texas, where I'm from, they my name is good. Like if I go up to somebody and they sell dope and they know they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy's good." I could go up and, "Hey man, where can I get some coke?" And who are you? And then once I tell my name and who I'm from and where, oh, they'll start investigating. Like, "Oh no, this guy's good." So they'll point me in different directions to go and get this coke. Well, just like sin, the enemy always knows how to bring somebody. When you look up to no good, the devil brings somebody, and all of a sudden, I was looking for coke, and it was the same thing as the heroin. I started small time. I would get a quarter ounce, break it down, sell 20s, and then the quarter ounce turned into a half ounce, and then ounces, and then here I go helping my friend. And next thing you know, it started taking off. Well, then I'm not bragging, I'm not saying nothing, but my name here is good. What I mean by that is, so when people found out I was in the drug game again, they started looking for me like, "Hey man," because back then, how I am is I'm not gonna say nothing. I live by that old code. I'm older, so our code was whoever gets caught, it's yours. So people didn't mind doing business with me. They're like, "Oh no, no, yeah, yeah, that guy's good. Here, here." So after a while, I didn't even start looking. People were looking for me, like, "Oh yeah, you're doing coke. Yeah, yeah, I'm selling coke." And just like sin, it started getting bigger. Next thing you know, I'm getting, you know, like I said, I started with grams and then quarter ounces and then half ounce. Next thing you know, it half ounce, then a quarter key, then a half a key. Next thing you know, I'm getting keys. I'm just gradually just moving up, moving up, moving up. And then I ran into one friend of mine. And the guy known for years, well, he actually showed me how to take that key of coke and turn it into two or turn it into three or do whatever. He had a machine that's called a press and the chemicals you needed. And I learned how to take one key of coke and make two. You can make as many as you want, but then it ain't no good. But then, so here we go now. I I could take one key of coke and make two out of it. Sometimes I'd make three out of it, but I had buyers who wanted that. I never burned nobody. That's why you know, I have a name that I can walk the streets. I can do what I want. I never burn nobody. There's people out here that were doing that. They would make junk and then go do a drug deal and run off, because they went and sold them. It was all, just no good. And so I would have buyers who wanted that stuff because I'd sell it to them real cheap and they would mark it up and go sell it. And I'm like, okay. So I became an actual, as they say, plug. I went from a street dealer to gradually promoting to where I wound up getting a connect from Mexico, and they started bringing me, you know, birds as they call them back then. I don't know what they call them now because the lingo changes over the years, but back then it was called birds or bricks, and they were bringing me bricks and birds back then, and I would get anywhere from one to two to maybe even five. The most I got ever at one time was five keys. But like I said, I could take one and turn it into two. And so whatever they gave me, I would just chop it up. Or if somebody's willing to pay the right price, I'd sell it as is. But I'm over here trying to make money. But I had different clientele, different customers. And next thing you know, here we go again. I start because I said I'm not gonna sell drugs no more, and then I only got in to help him, and here goes that life again. It just started a continuous circle. I'm climbing up the ranks, and little do I know I'm setting myself up for the FBI now. This is where the FBI is going to get me. That first conviction was state. I actually got to sat it out in the county jail. They wound up sending me to a boot camp for the heroin, and that's why I say how great God is. Had they busted that room or waited to get in that room, they would have found me with a bunch of heroin cut up, ready to distribute. They would have got me for trafficking, distributing, manufacturing, all that heroin. You know.
But you know, with this one, when you were setting yourself up, how did this go down for the cocaine?
Oh, okay. So for the cocaine, how now I moved on to cocaine. Come to find out, I'm making a lot more money in cocaine than I did the heroin because I learned this recipe, and now I'm cutting two keys. I mean, I'm making, so I'm making all profit. I'd pay off one key and made money on that, and the other key was 100% profit. And so I'm over here doing this, and after a while, I'm doing it. Here I go. I'm renting limousines. I got all kinds of friends. We're going on trips. We're doing the limousine, buying the bars. I mean, money's being spent like crazy now because I'm making way more money than I ever did on the heroin. I'm making big money on this coke, and so, and then like I said, me having the name I have now, I'm not gonna say nothing of whatever's. I didn't have a problem with getting coke for a second there, but then I'll go to this story real quick. My main supplier, and this goes to show how money will not make you happy. My main supplier giving me keys, and he had keys. He was a big time guy here in Austin. He wound up committing suicide. He kills himself. So I guess you can say that was the beginning of my fall because I had this steady plug, as you want to say, always supplying me. And when he did that, I had to try to find somebody else to supply because I had gotten, so big that one brick wasn't enough, two bricks wasn't enough. I needed a steady supplier of bricks, keys now, not an ounce. I couldn't do nothing with an ounce. I can't do nothing with a quarter key. I need keys because I done built up my, people who are working for me. I'm dropping them off quarter keys, here, this, that. They're getting large quantities, not no more, no ounce, no half ounce. They were getting big amounts. So I needed big amounts to keep supplying them. So here I go. I start just grabbing on anything to make the money. Plus, I built up that lifestyle of doing whatever I wanted to do. You want to keep it. So the fall of my cocaine was I just started trying to grab on anyone to here, let me here, I'll buy some coke from you. I just need some coke. So I had, because the heroin, I actually had a partner on that one because let me backtrack. When I also got into my coke game, I also got back into the heroin game also. And another right hand man of mine that we did heroin back when we were kids, he came back into business with me. I'm doing the coke and heroin, and he comes back with me. And so, wait, well, I'm doing coke. He comes back with me, and he wants to get back in the heroin game. All right, so I'm doing good at this time. I got money. So I wound up buying a few ounces of heroin. I said, hey, look, here, we're going to go 50-50 on this. He's my right hand on the heroin. So he's moving the heroin and we're splitting the money and he's going back and forth. I said, man, that guy committed suicide. I tell him, I said, look, man, you find me a cocaine connect, you can have the heroin and we'll just be partners. But the heroin's yours. I just need to. So he got on the hunt. He's like, hey, man. So he introduced me to some guys from San Antonio, which were good. I ended up getting a key from them, maybe two. And so now my right hand, he's moving the heroin, I'm moving the coke. And so as time goes on, the coke gets and now I know it was God because now I'm starting to fish that something goes wrong with them, they get caught or something. And so now I'm just trying to grab on anybody to get coke, which you don't do in this business. Next thing you know it, I meet a friend of mine and he was dealing with some guys in San Antonio and he's like, hey, I got some friends in San Antonio. I said, hey, you know what? Let's go down there. You vouch for me. I'm good. He's like, yeah. So when he introduced me into these guys down here in San Antonio, I guess let me how I can figure it out. Let's say me, you, and another guy are doing business. The three of us are legit. Where he went to go get that coke from to bring it to me, the guy had gotten busted. We didn't know it. So this story is like a two-piece story because I'm waiting on another guy that I know from San Antonio. But in the meantime, I'm dealing with this other guy. I said, man, I need coke. I just you start grabbing anything, back in that life, just, man, I'm trying to hurry up. And so when I go to meet this other guy and do a deal with him, he set us up. He set us up. And I thank God he only gave me a quarter key, which is only 9 ounces. And I know in some things like 9 ounces, that's like, but into what I was involved in, 9 ounces, we can go party that off in a night. It's not the big in what I used to do. So 9 ounces, I said, you know what? I took the 9 ounces and got caught with the 9 ounces because the guy come to find out I was set up. And I guess the guy didn't know me. Like, there's a guy from Austin. Hey, who cares? We'll give him up. And so when I get busted, I go keep my mouth shut. But adding on to the story, had I waited for that other guy I was about to deal with, he was bringing me five keys and 200 pounds of weed. Like I said, God gave me another chance because had I got busted with the 5 keys and 200 pounds of weed, another 20-year sentence because of my criminal history. And now I know the feds uses everything about you and they add it to your sentence.
Jeez,
Yeah,
man.
even stuff you've already been sentenced for. Now that I'm in the
Oh,
feds, it's a number chart, and other people who see this video know about the feds. They know what I'm talking about. It's a chart, and you know how in the state they usually don't, because I've dealt with state my whole life. They
mhm.
usually don't, you know, hit you with something you already done unless you're just a repeat offender over and over. But they'll just charge you basically for what you did at that time, and that's what they'll do.
Well, when they came and got you, how did that go down?
Okay, so I'm doing the deal with the guy, right? So here we go. We go meet at this apartment. My friend goes inside. I'm in the car waiting. And I knew, I was like, this deal is taking too long. He goes in there to talk to the guy, and the guy in there is legit. He goes, hey, look, my friend's at work and he hasn't got off yet. I gotta wait for him to get off work and come bring me the quarter key, or just a quarter key. So I'm in the car waiting, waiting. Well, what that other guy was doing, that little did we know, the guy in the house is legit, my friend's legit, I'm legit. The guy he called is he's getting the cops ready. So he let them know, so without us even knowing it. And later on, it says in my indictment, there was a helicopter above us watching us. The police were waiting for us, and everything was getting set up around us. And I had no idea. That guy said, yeah, my friend's at work. When he gets off, he's going to bring it. Well, he did. He comes and brings that quarter key. The guy gives it to my friend, gets back in the car. We drive off. When I drive off, the cops get right behind me and pull us over. I said, man, we were set up. But you know what's crazy about seeing is that once I was pulled over and they got me out of the car and they found it, it was like a relief. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go away. And there's one cop. I was real huge then. I'm big now, but when I was dealing, I was 325 pounds. I was drinking, eating, partying. My liver was swollen because I was alky, and I thank God I got busted because I would have had been dead for cirrhosis if I had stayed out the way I was drinking and partying. And I used to get up and spit blood and start drinking again the next day. I mean, I was living a horrible life. And when those handcuffs, they had to get two pair of handcuffs to put me behind my back. And then so I was like, ah. And that cop gets me in the car. He goes, you gonna say anything? We already had a saying. I refuse to say anything without the presence of my attorney. I ain't saying nothing. I would just get in the car. And they brought the other guy who sold to me. They go, you know him? I said, I don't know who that is. And I got in the car. And they booked us in. And me, the guy with me, and the other guy, all three of us are in the cell. And I said, hey, where's that guy who came in that car that dropped it off to you? I don't know. I said, how come he ain't in the cell with us? I don't know. I said, your friend set us up. No, that's my friend. And that's why I also want to relate in the drug game. You don't have no friends. This life is horrible. And we'll probably talk about that on another one. But so that guy can't believe it. He goes, no way. He's been to my house. He's eating at my and my children, I said, man, that dude snitched on it. No, he did it. Well, they let him go and got him on just the guy that I gave some money to. I got caught with the dope. I never wrote my money about him. They just got him for reckless driving. He thought I set him up, and he went on a little chase from the cops. And I said, I got in there. I said, man, I didn't set you up. I said, it was your friend. No, no way. They let him go right then and there. Well, then that's why the feds got involved, is because it was really a state charge, but they didn't want me. They wanted that guy. And since I wouldn't, you know, testify or say nothing about him, they threw the federal charge on us and wrapped all of us up. They didn't need me no more. Once you get the feds involved, that's it. And so later on, I ran into that guy in the cell later on. We're going to court, and I said, "Hey, I told you." He goes, "Yeah, it was my friend. He set us up." I
Wow.
said, "Well, go ahead and fight it because I'm not going to testify against it." He goes, "Nah, man, they're only offering me 2 years." He goes, "I'm going to sign." I said, "All right, hey, dude, if you want to fight it, because I'm not going to testify in your trial. I'm gonna go ahead and bite whatever they caught me with, and that's it." And I saw him later on. I really don't even know the guy. It was my first time meeting him. And he's like, "All right, I'll see you later." And then we went on passing, and yep, his friend set us up. You
How
know.
much time did you get?
Well, this is where I tell people, you want to be hard headed, which I don't condone saying it. Now, if somebody's watching this video and have said something, hey, I'm a Christian now. I don't care what you've done. My thing is there's redemption. God can change your life. But anyway, I refuse to cooperate, and I'm not going to cooperate. I said no. Just give me my sentence. Do you know I turned a 2 year sentence into a 7 year sentence, and let me show you how.
Wow. Wow. Let's hear
the
it.
Yeah, so the federal court wanted me to cooperate, and I said no. Well, with 9 ounces of coke, and there's a chart, it's at 22 months. That's what it categorized, 22 to 30 months. And they usually give it a low end, and it's a point reduction. I mean, it's, feds is points, and if for just accepting the responsibility without taking it to trial, they drop points, and it got me down to 22 months. What I was going to have to do on this federal sentence.
Hmm.
Well, they wanted me to cooperate. I said, no, I'm not going to cooperate. Just give me my 22 months. I'm like, 22 months. I was, woo. They're like, 2 years for the average person. They're like, they don't want to do one day. I'm like, man, 2 years is nothing. I just got caught. I'm like, man, I was happy. Well, then I also had a state charge because I was on uh, probation for the state
Oh, yeah.
before this charge for the heroin, because I actually wound up doing a year and getting 10 years probation for that heroin.
Mhm.
And then no, that was for the aggravated assault deadly weapon. I'm sorry. And
Oh,
they gave me 10 years a deferred adjudicated probation. And then so we had money. I know it was God, but we paid the attorney a lot of money, and they kept getting me reinstated, reinstated, reinstated. So when I caught this federal charge, they revoked that state time, and they said, "Oh, you're going to go sit out the TDC time, which is Texas Department of Corrections here in Texas." Well, my state judge said, "Well, I'll run it concurrent, mean together with your federal sentence." They're like, "Yeah, your Fed eats it up." Okay, I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna knock these two sentences out at one time." I'm so happy, and they gave me, I don't know, my 2 years in TDC that I had left, and then my federal was gonna be 2 years. I'm like, "Oh man, 2 years," and they're gonna run together. I said, "I'll be out here in a few more months," because they give me the time credit when I was sitting in there waiting. So I'm
mhm.
like, "Oh man, I'll be out here in a little while." Well, that wasn't God's plan. So when I go back to the federal court, he goes, "I sentenced you." They took me out of a guide range, and I'll explain this. You get sentenced in a guide range, meaning sentence can be anywhere from 22 to 30 months. They sentence in months, not years. Or
Right.
your thing can category from 30 to 36 months, 36 to 46. It's all in months. Well, then my category was only 22 months to 30. And what they did was they took me out of my guide range, put me up two more levels, and gave me the high end of that one. So my sentence wound up being from 40 to 46 months, which is 4 years. They wound up giving me the 4 year sentence. And I'm sitting there like, wait, my point was only 22, 2 years. So they doubled it. And then he goes, I don't run my sentence concurrent with your TDC sentence. I stack them. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait, but my state judge, he goes, that's state. I'm a federal judge. Mine overrides any, and it's true. The feds is the highest you can get. They override whatever any state judge says. So I wound up going to TDC and do my time over there, and then I switch around, come back, and start my federal sentence. So that's how I turned a 2 year sentence into a 7. Is because I wouldn't help, I wouldn't cooperate, and they know how to. All right, you don't want to say nothing. Well, we know how to take care of you.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's how I wound up doing a 7. But what's going on?
yeah, and this is for the people now wondering, okay, where's the redemption aspect? When is this going to happen? We're an hour, almost an hour in. Well, okay, this is where it starts to happen a little after he gets into prison, right? So this is your turnaround. Like you get into prison, you get involved in a prison gang, right? And then this is a little after, you go in there and,
Mhm.
you didn't, it wasn't by choice in the beginning, right? I mean, like, but, go into the prison gang situation because you got to expand on that a little bit because there was that, if that wasn't, I mean, that's a big part of why, I mean, I think it's important you expand on that, right? It's
Yes,
part of it's part of your testimony, I think.
yes.
You know what I mean?
And so, okay, what to go to the beginning, what happened is the Lord allowed the longer sentence because so I can be real quick. Because 2 years wasn't gonna be enough for me. Now I'm looking back because I was already planning to deal drugs again and do it again. And when then you get in the federal system, it's true. There's movies, those federal movies. All you do is you meet bigger fish. So when I got into the feds, I met real dope dealers. So I hooked up with those dope dealers because we'd read each other's paperwork, get in the feds, and they see I wasn't cooperating or helping nobody. So they were quick to bring me on board. Oh yeah, yeah. When you get out, we're ready. So I met guys that were deep Mexico that had numbers so long. I didn't even know there was a number that long because it goes way deep into Mexico. There's more numbers and digits. They're like, hey, call my brother and you get out. So when I get into prison, there was a gang which I already knew back when I was younger, and it's called, the gang is called Tango Blast. So I was here in Texas, and I already knew of that gang, and I had friends that were in it, and I already knew of it, and I like what the basic motto is: nobody can tell you what to do, which I like. Don't tell me what to do, but I don't mind. The basic motto is if you see somebody getting jumped or somebody uh basically getting jumped, you get in, no questions asked. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that here in the streets, but they they had a motto of if it's a 101, let it happen. If anybody jumps in, then you jump in, and we take care of our own. And I'm like, oh, and nobody tells you what to do. I liked it. I like that type of model, so it drew me in, and so I started hanging around these guys. Which, like I said, I already had friends years ago that were in this, but the thing of this gang is you really can't. And plus, I never wanted to join no gang anyway, but you couldn't even join it unless you were in prison. So I started hanging out with these guys. I knew them in the county jail. I'd been doing time in and out, in and out, in and out. And then so I already had friends, and then they were telling me about it. And I'm like, man, this is, you know what? Hey, I don't mind this. This is what I did out in the world. I wasn't in a gang. To me, it was like a group. We just looked out for each other. So as that gang stuff got involved, I realized this is a real gang because here we go. Now we're fighting other gangs, and it started getting real deep. Like I was telling you how I even got saved was I got in a riot. I mean, a major riot, and I sent you that paperwork about how we were 150 inmates with bats and horseshoes. Because in the feds, they give you bats, they give you stuff because they want you to go out there and have go play. But we checked them out. They want you to go play what they're used for: softball, horseshoes. But what we did is we checked them out, knowing this riot was going to happen, and we used them on each other. So in that riot report that I sent you is there's more to all this, but it gradually got deeper and deeper in this gang life. Next thing you know, we're over here fighting another major family here in Texas, And here we are out there in the rec yard, which I already had a good jump before, but this is the biggest ride at one time that I've ever been in. I've been in little skirmishes of 5 guys, six, but there's 150 of us out here just going at it. Baseball bat, shanks, everything. And so, like I showed you on paperwork, that's where I got shanked in the shoulder and the arm, and 12 staples across the top of the head, 6 down the back. And I also show you how I got my name. And I forgot to tell you, they don't know me as Jamie. They might know me as Botello, but this is where I got my prison name, Tonka. And I'll explain that real quick. During this riot, they're shanking me, fighting me. I'm on the front line. I'm not in the back. That's why I got so many wounds and shanking, because you got to be in the mix to even get all those battle wounds on you. So as that breaks out, that's where I got my prison name. So people don't know me as Jamie, and it's funny when they find out, Jamie, who's this guy you're talking about? I'm like, so my prison name is either Botello, they call me my last name, or Tonka. And how I got the name Tonka is after the riot, is that they said, man, you were getting hit with the canes and you got shanked. And they said you just kept on trucking over them. And that's where that Tonka truck is. They named me that. I didn't name myself. They did when I was in prison. They said, hey, that's Tonka. And
Tonka.
Tonka, yeah, I'm like,
Ton
where'd you get that? They said, because you were just trucking over them. They said, you just kept on going and you were just moving and fighting and go to the next one. And that's where I got Tonka from. That's why my prison name is Tonka. But that, and I'm
Tonka
like, where's
truck.
that? It's for Tonka truck. And that's what they got. And,
Wow.
I'm not a small guy, I'm a pretty good sized guy. And then they're like,
Yeah.
so they don't know me as Jamie. My name is either Botel or Tonka. They're like, Tonka from the feds, from ATX. Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm known for when I was in prison in the feds, is Tonka truck. And that's where it came from. It came from that riot. After that, they started calling me Tonka. I didn't name myself. I'm not on the streets known as that.
Just in there.
That was my prison. And it came out with me because there's some guys, or they'll meet another guy. Like one day I went to get a haircut and the dude said, hey, Tonka. And I'm like, how does he know
No.
that? Hey, a friend of mine told me, hey, you were in there with him. I said, oh. I said, yeah, that's what they call me in prison. And so from that riot, that's why I had to get with this riot. They put me on Con Air and kicked me out. I was at Beaumont here in Texas. They flew me to Maryland. Now I've been on Con Air. I've been in the black boxes. Ever been in the feds know the black boxes? That's where they put it on your wrist, your handcuffs. You can't move your wrists, and it's called the black box. You can't move your hands. And so I've been on Con Air. They flew me. To make a long story short, I was actually in the hole. Went through all these holes, which is the shoe. They call it special housing unit. Finally, I made it to Maryland. To make a long story short, when I made it to Maryland, federal prison, we're over there still gang banging. We opened the yard. That's another story because we almost got in a fight there because they didn't want us there. But we God. Now I know God allowed us, but it was going to come down to a physical confrontation. But God oversaw it, and so while I'm there, I got there in like '07. I'm walking around, and I'll be honest, God, I had felt stuff in my heart because I remember one year because I kept seeing all the New Year's, and in feds they leave the TV on and let you see through the window, but every day is the same. They shut the door at a certain time. That's it. Whether it be New Year's, Christmas, it don't matter. So I would always watch the New Year's through the doors. And one day I was sitting there and I said, God, I'm tired of seeing my New Year's keep passing through this hole in this window. And I said that to myself. Well, come to find out, God used another fellow gang member without me even knowing it. Because, like I said, God, I've said it before, God works in mysterious ways. Is this gang member of mine said, hey, why don't you go to church with me next Sunday? Because I was walking to the rec yard. And as I was walking to the rec yard, he comes out of the church service. And I'm like, hey, man. He goes, hey, go to church with me. I said, man, you crazy, man. You should have thought about church. I was cussing. You should have thought about church if you got in here. Now you're in prison. I was on there, man, to talk lit. Now you scared. Now you want to go to church, man. Whatever. But throughout the days, God let remember, because I was at Beaumont, they beat up a guy at church service. So I said, hey, you know what? hey, so as the week went on, come I ran into him on a Sunday out of the service. I'm going to rec yard come Monday, come Tuesday, come Wednesday, come Thursday. I said, hey man, I'm going to church with you on Friday, so you won't be alone, and I have your back. So I said, you know what? I'll be there. And that's the type of guy I was. If I said I had your back, and all my friends know me, I got your back. I'm gonna be there fighting with you. It don't matter if it's just me and you. So I said, I'll go. Well, this guy who invites me, I get in the federal prison. It's called 10-minute move. They let you go where you're gonna go, and then they lock the door and you can't get out. So I said, all right, I'll meet you there. So when I get 10-minute move, I go over there. I go to the church service. He doesn't show up. Well, his boss didn't come to find out. His boss didn't let him out because he was working in the child hall. So he said, "No, I need you. I'm short. I need you to stay here and work." So I'm at that church service and got locked in. I said, "Man," so I'm mad. I'm mad. I said, "Man, I came to meet him, and he doesn't show up, and I'm literally locked in. I cannot leave." I'm like, "Man," so I'm sitting there all big chest, and because I'm looking around, making sure nobody's gonna try to do nothing. Because like I said, in prison, they'll get you at church service. You know, everywhere is what they say green light. Everywhere something can happen. So I'm looking around. Next thing you know, that man starts preaching, and as he's preaching, I know now it was God because I don't even know what he's preaching, but it catches my ear. And next thing you know, I start listening, and I start listening. I went from all big chest in my chair to just sinking down and sinking. And I'll be honest, I don't even know what was said. It's just catching me, and I'm listening. I'm listening, and he said something like, God can change your life, and by the end of the service, I'm all big chest. Well, I was skinny then. My head was in my lap. I'm down. My head is down. And he said, "Who wants to accept Jesus?" And it was like an angel took my hand and raised it. And I accepted Christ that day. That was 16 and a half years ago. That's how I know this is real because I didn't go to church. Like you said at the beginning, you're sure right. I didn't go to church I need Jesus. No, there's nothing wrong with anybody who does that. But what I'm saying, God can grab you. And that's why I know now there's no, I used to believe God can only grab you this way, or God can only grab you that way. No, no, God will use any means necessary, but we still have to say, yes, I accept you, Christ. So by the end of that service, my heart was touched. And I raised my hand. You're right. I didn't go to service to go to service. I went to service to go fight, and God grabbed me that day. And from that day on, little by little, a few months later, I wound up dropping out of the prison gang. I wound up, next thing you know, I went from the art of fighting to carrying my Bible. And they're like, man, what's wrong with this guy? And then I thank God because it opened the door for other people to let me talk because like, no, that's Tonka from ATX. That they, pray. I don't know, man, that's Tonka truck from ATX. Man, he's over here with the Bible.
Mhm.
And the guys who knew me, they're like, man, that dude, no, he was every fight. I'm not lying. I got, even before prison, I got stabbed. I got wounds from fights that, I'd always stay there and fight. I wouldn't run away. And so next thing you know, they were like, because like part of the gang wanted to get me, but the other part that was in the riots with me, they got shipped out with me. They're like, this guy's hiding behind the Bible. And they're like, no, he's not. He was in the riots with us. This stuff is for real. So half wanted to get me, the other half, I know the Lord used the other half to say, no, he's not faking it. And so at first they all, some wanted to get me, but the Lord used the other ones and said, no, he's not faking it. This guy is for real. And they called me out to the yard, had a meeting with me. Hey, we're gonna let you walk out, but if we see you going back to doing what you're doing, they said we're gonna put some iron in your diet. It means we're gonna put a shank in you, piece of steel. They'll put iron in your diet. That's what it's called in there. We're gonna put some iron in
Jeez.
your diet.
Wow.
And I said, hey, you know what? I hear you. I agree. But that's the redemptive story. How God has taken this criminal inmate to now. I'm out of prison. I got out in that sentence. I went from '03 to 2010. I gave my life to the Lord 2 years before I got out. Now I'm married. I have older sons that, God for that I pray that we have a relationship again. But being in jail and drinking and selling drugs, I saw them, but you need a father for real, not. But the Lord has blessed me with a wife, and I have two more children now that I'm married. I'm got a good job with a government agency here in Texas, and and I thank God. Look, He's allowed me to be on this podcast now. So God is moving and doing things in my life that I love this life way more than I ever did selling the drugs. Because even behind selling the drugs, even when it seemed like a good time, in the back of my mind, are they gonna bust me? You can never have peace. You could never have peace. Either you get in a fight at the club, and I had friends wind up getting stabbed, and we're fighting. I mean, all kinds of chaos would break out. Girl, I mean, it was nothing but a hassle. Now that I look back, I thought, man, I'm having fun. This is how hectic that life was, and I realized when they arrested me, it was like joy, like it's over. It's over. When they put the cuffs on me, even the cop looked at me. I said, "Oh, by the time I get out, I'll be skinny because I know I'd go to jail worked out." And I
Yeah.
knew I was going to do some time, but I didn't think second on a two. But God knew I needed to have longer because I thank
Right.
God. And at first, I was mad at the person who told. I'm not. I'm not mad at no one who. I'm not. I thank God that He did because I'd either be dead or doing a life sentence. So I
Thankful and
thank God.
grateful.
Yeah, I'm grateful for everything that's happened because my life has changed. I talk to other inmates. I talk to other kids now that are thinking about joining gangs or join gangs. And like, I mean, I enjoy it. It's not a headache. Hey, will you go talk to my brother? Sure. Where's he at? If I can get to him or do something or send a letter, hey, I love doing what I do now. And you know what? I love
Mhm.
the peace I have. I don't have to worry about the feds kicking my door down. When I get in a car and I'm my family, we load up. I don't worry about, hey, is a dope under the seat? You know what? It's beautiful. I
Mhm.
love this life I have now, and that's the main thing I can say is anybody, if you see this, your life is not over. God has a life for you better than you ever could have thought of. Because I used to think of my life was, man, I ain't gonna be nothing but an inmate and try. Nope, the Lord said, nope, I got a better life for you. This is you ain't seen nothing yet, and I love this life I have now. I love the peace. Nothing is better than the peace I have. I can come home and don't worry about the feds kicking in my door. I hug my wife. I see my kids. They run up in my arms. Hey, because I got 11 and a 3-year old now.
Yeah.
And I mean, God has blessed me tremendously since I've been out of prison.
Yeah, and that's what makes your story so much powerful is that you've been through the rough stuff and you were, like you said, in these riots and stand behind a lot of these violent actions and everything, and you didn't go looking for God. God found you, and you just happened to be there, and you're just like you just, and so it just shows it's more for real and it's
oh,
genuine.
oh
It's,
yeah.
and so that's why I really liked your story, and when I like you said, it was no accident when I came across your YouTube channel, and when I was it just happened, and you were able to be seem to be pretty easy to access when I reached out to your email, man, and look where we are now. We've had multiple conversations. This is our first podcast we've done, so this is good. This was really a good conversation with you, Jamie, and I'm really like that what you're doing. I think you're going to continue to make some really great videos. You got a YouTube channel. Everybody, if you want to check it out, I'll be sure to put that in the video description. I'll put his email in there too if you want to contact him with about anything. I'm not totally sure what you maybe have a question or anything for Jamie, but he's got pretty good wisdom and advice to give out, and I mean he's been through a lot and he's still doing a lot. He's got a lot more work to do, right, Jamie?
Oh yeah. Except for the good. That's what I love. It's to change lives for the better. Because my old life is if you got involved with me, we were gonna go do something wrong that can
Right.
lead to either death or prison. Now the Lord has given me the word of life, meaning I'm gonna bring life, joy, happiness, peace, because I'm gonna preach Jesus and let
Mhm.
everybody know, hey, I don't care what situation you're in, God can get you out of it and turn your life around.
That's what it's all about, man. That's what it all comes down to. But Jamie, any final thoughts before we wrap up and close the podcast today?
No, like I was saying earlier, as long as whoever sees this is by no mistake you come across it. Hey, God's calling you, he has a life for you. If you're in a cell or if you're sitting in a dope house, or because I've seen, God can change you. It's by no mistake you came across this video. God's calling you, and he's got a wonderful and beautiful life for you. Because I used to sit in my prison cell and say, my life's over. I ain't gonna be nothing, so I might as well be the best nothing I can be. But no, the Lord said, nope, I got something better for you, and your life is barely beginning. So whoever sees this, God's calling you, and he's got a wonderful and beautiful life for you. It doesn't matter what you're involved in, he'll get you out and turn your whole life around.
Jamie, you're absolutely right. Thank you everyone for watching today. And of course, we'll see you on the next one. God has transformed Jamie into a new version of himself. Jamie is now spreading the word of God. The fact that Jamie didn't go looking for God and he was a very violent person goes to show how powerful God truly is. People can't say Jamie got scared while he was in prison. He is the real deal. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this podcast with Jamie. Please share it with anyone that you think needs to hear this podcast. Also, if you just enjoy hearing stories like this, please share it out of the kindness of your heart. Also, hit the like button if you enjoyed today's podcast. Hit the notification bell if you want to get notified when the next podcast drops. Also, please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up called the Invest in Yourself podcast playlist. And on that playlist, you can find all the previous podcasts I've done in the past. Thank you again so much for watching. And of course, we'll see everyone on the next one.